let's get to these behind the scenes recruiting. I don't want you to give too much away, Hank.
Yeah.
Because this is great stuff. This is my favorite articles of the year where you pull back the curtain, but maybe give us just a little snippet or two of your favorite stories.
Trying to think. There's just so many. It's like such a whirlwind after putting it all together when it's all up there. I guess, I'll say this. I think KJ Lacey's recruitment was actually kind of interesting. I spoke with somebody close to him on like sometime last week, just kind of, touching base. Cause I think if you look back on his recruitment and, he committed, he was the first commitment in the class of 2025 for Texas way back in, June 2023. He had just finished his sophomore season. He had led Saraland to a state title, had a lot of interest, but really was enamored with Texas. He committed when he camped in early June, and he never, decommitted or flipped or anything, but he kind of looked back to around this time last year. There was still interest from other programs and, somewhat mutual interest from KJ Lacey. You look at, Auburn, they pursued him very heavily. Obviously they ended up with Deuce Knight, who was another big quarterback target of theirs, but there was visits to Auburn still going on, but and when you talk to KJ, he would say, I'm locked in, but he wouldn't go as far as saying his recruitment was shut down. He said, I'm getting there, but it's not there yet. So, it kind of left that question of, what's still to do or, what's left. But I talked to a source close to him and they said, Ole Miss was calling him the day before National Signing Day on, back in December.
Of course they were.
Yeah, trying to make a move. Lane Kiffin was trying to steal KJ Lacey. And they never visited Ole Miss. Obviously I think, conversations were had, they weren't going to just, block out any coaches, but they never did visit. He only visited Ole Miss or Auburn. But he, I think with all things equal, I think Texas had the best NIL for him in terms of, what they were willing to do. I think obviously, Sark being the quarterback's guru he is, AJ Milwee, they all chipped in there and he felt most comfortable at Texas. So I thought that one was really interesting. Going through some of these, Keelan Russell, we're on the top of quarterbacks. He ended up at Alabama, obviously. But that was a guy that really his stock exploded last spring after his junior season. He's, I think, like the number one quarterback in the composite now. But there was a minute there where, from what we were hearing, talking to sources, Texas was looking at taking two quarterbacks. I'm not sure everything that went into, the decision to not offer Keelan Russell. I think it was clear that, I think earlier in the spring, he was happy with the idea of maybe being in a 2 quarterback class with KJ Lacey. It was pretty funny. At the Under Armour Dallas event last year, I was talking to him. He hadn't been offered by Texas and he was talking to Texas and he said, if I go to Texas, I'm going to beat KJ Lacey out. It was like a very blunt quote. But he never got offered by Texas. They brought him in on a visit on a random Sunday in April. But they just never offered him. And I don't know if that was just more of, I think maybe he wanted to be more of the one-man show than he was letting on. And that's why, he looked at Alabama more. Or if Texas was just, happy with KJ and leaving it at that and not really rocking the boat with KJ and offering another quarterback. Because, we saw them really go heavy to get a preferred walk-on in the class. They just got the kid on Sunday. They didn't need another scholarship though. So, 3 scholarship quarterbacks, a couple preferred walk-ons. But yeah, Keelan Russell, that was an interesting one. Man, I'm like looking at all Jordan stuff. Jordan like wrote thousands and thousands of words on different guys. Yeah.
Real quick, tell folks about that preferred walk-on quarterback and the significance of that.
Yeah. So, he's from McCallum, and I'm doing him a disservice by on the spot forgetting his name right now, but I'm going to pull this up for you right here. Luke Dunham. He's actually a stud. He had a senior season, 2,600 yards, 28 touchdowns. And, we saw Texas do this with, or try to do this with Maddox Mayer, the Dripping Springs quarterback a couple weeks ago. He was committed to Angelo State. They gave him a preferred walk-on offer, wanted him to come in the class. He opted to stay with Angelo State on scholarship. He felt that was a good situation for him. So they went kind of back to the drawing board. Luke Dunham from McCallum, a guy they're going to bring in, obviously never really had the expectation he's going to play. And I want to say too, they're bringing in the Houston Christian transfer as well as a walk-on, CJ Rogers. So they're bringing in two preferred walk-on quarterbacks. Obviously that can eventually move on to a scholarship, down the road. But, it just goes to show, I think most schools, if you look at their rosters, I want to say they typically carry 4 scholarship quarterbacks. So I think, the fact that they're originally looking at 2 scholarship guys in this class and only taking 1 really emphasized the need to at least go get some more depth from what was left. But yeah, a nice piece to add to the quarterback room. So you got Arch and then Trey backing him up, and KJ in that third string role, assuming that's how spring pans out. But yeah, so that's behind the scenes. I'm trying to think if there's any other good ones that pop out. Josiah Sharma, the defensive lineman from California. That was one. I've talked to some guys in California over the last couple of weeks. Apparently the night before USC came in and made a bigger NIL offer, or, they made a big push. They were expecting him to be in the class. And this was after a couple of days of, things kind of calmed down after his visit to USC. We expected him to stick with Texas. And from what I was told, Texas just wasn't having it. They were just like, this is what it is. We're where we're at. We feel good about it. And I guess whatever, recruiting pitch from that point on they gave, he was happy with. So he stuck with Texas. Because if you look back on Josiah Sharma, all along he wanted to go to Texas. He committed to Oregon. He was about to announce his commitment to Texas on a 24/7 Sports live stream 2 hours before Oregon called him, up the ante, got him to commit. And then 3 weeks later, he visits Texas, flips on that visit. So Texas all along was where he wanted to be. Obviously, it was an NIL situation where Oregon was able to dip in there last second. I think Texas, came in there too and matched whatever they needed to do to get him. So by the time you get to December, and then, these leverage plays are coming back into the fold, it's just wild. And so, I think Texas stood their ground and were able to keep him in the class. And obviously he's a big addition to the puzzle with, all the interior defensive linemen they're needing to replace. So Sharma was another crazy one. Jamie French, I don't think was as crazy as people made it out to be. I think he was pretty set on Texas all along. Florida came in late. They had the late season surge with DJ Lagway looking great. There's all the buzz. If you looked at Florida message boards, you would have assumed he was already in their class. But talking to sources around him with knowledge, he was very upfront with Texas the whole time. And I think a guy like Jamie French, he kind of tells you what you want to hear, I think, a lot of the times. And you always have a great experience talking to Jamie French. He's just a very personable person. And so maybe he was giving off, more than, Florida was really in play. But he actually gave a great quote. We asked him at the All-American Bowl about, he could have stayed in Florida, and, Jacksonville to Gainesville is a much shorter distance than Austin to Gainesville, or to Jacksonville. And I can't remember the exact quote, but he kind of, he said basically, why would I want to spend somewhere where I don't actually want to be than fly a few hours to be in Austin where I, want to actually play. Kind of put, the real quote was a little bit more damn, threw some shade on Florida, but I don't think he meant it that way. But the quote was awesome. I'll have to go back and find it. Jordan might've put it in there, but yeah. So Jamie French, that was, every recruitment is kind of crazy by the time you get to November. It's that's when the last, NIL offers are being made, visits are being taken. So, right now we talk about kids and, where they're trending, and some of them are going to end up, where we think they are, but it's so early and so many things are going to change that it's it feels silly to even fully cover it, as this, what's going to, as a certainty or anything,
Well, Hank, you're talking about these commits, as you just mentioned, Jamie French seems like he has a really fun, outgoing personality. And this generation of teenager is different. Like I already saw a TikTok video a couple of weeks ago of the freshmen doing some weird circle dance. And I was like, all right, it's weird to me, but again, I'm not 18 years old, so I just don't get it. But you can tell they're already having fun and whatnot. Talk about just some of these commitments and guys that have signed that are already on campus that stand out with their personality when you talk to them personally.
Yeah, I think Jamie French tops that list. Obviously, he actually Jordan has a great story from him. They were at a camp in one of the 7-on-7 camps last year, but Jamie French really never turned down interviews. Like he would do as many interviews as he needed to do. And Jordan said he overheard Jamie talking to somebody, and they're like, "Why do you do so many interviews?" He's like, "That's how you get the money, like that's how you get your face out there. You get." So I'm like, "Hey, he's smart." But I would say Jamie French, Bo Barnes is a good personality. He was a class leader. His dad's awesome too. He was kind of like the family or the parent class leader. There's always kind of some of the parents of commits that when you're on official visits, the kids go off and do their stuff, and the parents are left hanging out. And so it's almost like you got to get to know the parents too, or the parents get to know each other as well. So I know Brandon Barnes, his dad. They're always, that official visit weekend, I think in mid-June, they were all hanging out, going out together, going out to eat and hanging out and having a good time. So Bo Barnes, KJ is a great personality. Who else? Who else is in the class? I'm trying to think. That's those three really stand out the most. Kalik Lockett is a really personable kid, fun to talk to. The running backs are kind of quiet. James Simon's a great interview, but I think Ricky Stewart, James Simon, they kind of keep to themselves a little bit, which is fine. But beyond that, the Coleman brothers, we don't have a ton of interviews with them. They're pretty quiet, but like when you do talk to them, they're hilarious. Like I think they'll fit right in. They're fun to talk
Coleman,
to.
they're like three. They are part of triplets.
Yes, triplets. So the third brother, he's a preferred walk-on. So Jordan and Devin are the scholarships, and then the third is the preferred walk-on. But this class seems like they're pretty tight knit. Jonah Williams too. They all get along really well. They've been a bunch of these visits together, and nowadays in recruiting, you like see these kids. Even if like there's a kid in Florida, kid in California, like you're going to see them 4 or 5 times in the off season just doing the 7-on-7 stuff they do. So it's like they know all each other. So it's a good group, and it's a fun one to cover.
Yeah, those guys are 340 and 350 pounds.
Yeah. They're huge.
What? And we met the parents?
The grocery bill is probably
that's nuts. Like you're going to Costco every day. Like you're not going to HEB. Like you're going to Costco, Sam's Club. Like you're buying in bulk just for a week. God bless those parents, man.
Seriously.
Yeah, no doubt about it. And we didn't really know much about like the Justice Terry thing. Kind of came together late.
Sure.
Top 10 player in the country. Georgia Bulldogs fans thought they had him in the bag, and then they started wondering what kind of bag Texas was offering.
See, it's funny now, like you say the bag, like the everyone says, oh, they dropped a bag, and it's like it's like more of like probably just a direct deposit now. Like my old boss Tim Watts, he made a good point. It's like it's not even a bag anymore; it's just a direct deposit. It's NIL. So it's funny, like, and then like I've seen this whole argument that like Georgia's players are going to Georgia on a discount to play for Kirby Smart, and it's just like let's not pretend that Georgia's not doing like paying players too. Like it's I saw that whole thing that was just someone said it was just a straight bag or a straight NIL package that wanted out for Justice Terry. Maybe it was, but he really did like Texas, and I wrote in the behind the scenes. It really came together a little late, their push for him. They reached out to him, I think in like mid to late September. asked him if he wanted to come on an official visit. He did. And he visited that Georgia game where the defensive line kind of just humbled the Texas offensive line and obviously beat them. And so you would think like common logic would be like, okay, he's probably saw what he wanted to see with Georgia and he's going to end up there. But it was kind of the opposite. Like he left just really liking Texas. Between Kenny Baker, Chris Gilbert, PK, Sark, they just really sold the program for him. And from that point on, it was still like, when I checked with sources, it was like, Georgia you just felt like he was going to go to Georgia. It was like one of those recruitments where, Georgia just isn't going to let that kid leave the state. And, my time covering Bama, I've seen it happen before with guys like Caleb Downs, Justice Haynes, like your top guys. Georgia lost them to Alabama the year they won the national championship. So it's possible. And I kept saying that, when I was giving my thoughts on Justice Terry, it's like, it's not totally unheard of. I do think he's going to go to Georgia, but sources, I was talking to kept saying, watch Justice Terry, like keep an eye on him. They were still working on him. And he really liked the visit. And then Chris Gilbert went out to see him. I want to say that the weekend of the Kentucky game, the Texas Kentucky game, Chris Gilbert went out there on Friday night to watch him play. And even then, like, it was still like, we were watching it. We had a shell ready in case he did pick Texas, but, nobody was, we didn't have a great feeling on it. Just, everyone said, keep watching him. And sure enough, he pulled it off. And I think we've mentioned this before, but Kenny Baker was actually the first coach to ever offer him when he was back at Western Kentucky prior to his time with Miami Dolphins. So goes to show, NIL, when, all things are equal, relationships still do sort of matter, or, early notice, that kind of stuff stands out. And so, getting a guy like him, freak show, from the state of Georgia. And, the whole class as a whole, 4 players from Georgia, Zealous Hicks, Amari, Winston, the tight end, Nick Brooks, and then Justice Terry. So, between Kenny Baker, Tashard Choice, those guys are, from Georgia. They have ties there. The whole staff as a whole can recruit that state really well.
Well, now we got to keep an eye on Alan Clark.
Yep.
Who is a Louisianimal from Baton Rouge. And I think part of the attraction to bringing in Alan Clark to work with the defensive ends at Texas, in addition to the fact that the guy works with Jeffrey Simmons and Daniil Hunter at Oliver, is that he's seen as a recruiter, a guy who likes to recruit, has the personality for it, Hank.
Yeah, especially, if you can make those inroads in the state of Louisiana, especially when you're trying to combat Bo Davis at LSU, having a guy like Alan Clark, Terry Joseph, who's strong in Louisiana, because obviously, Louisiana puts out some talent, or, even Louisiana, Mississippi, just that part of the country. It's huge. And, now that you have the, limitless on-field coaching kind of stuff you can do. It's still like there's still a limit on who you can sit out on the road, but I want to say, I would imagine he can go on the road. You see like Chris Gilbert go on the road. I think you kind of just have to shuffle the staff as to like who's out when. You just can't have everybody out on the road. You have to kind of limit that. But yeah, having a guy like him, with the experience he has, coming off a national championship with Ohio State, coming to Texas. He has some talent to work with. I think he'll prove very valuable this season.
Hank, going back to Justice Terry a little bit, how realistic is it for him to get significant minutes this upcoming season? Because, again, we see him big-time 5-star. We know what's happened with the defensive tackle position, with how many guys from the 2024 team won't be around in 2025, Alfred Collins, Verdon Broughton, et cetera. But Justice Terry, he's still got a battle with guys like Harold Canoe and Travis Shaw and Cole Brevard. And again, even though he's a highly touted freshman, still has to put on a little bit of weight for my comfort level. I've seen 275, I've seen 290. Guys have worked with that. Not everybody's Aaron Donald, but still, what's the expectation for Justice Terry going into 2025?
Yeah, I think, you want to hope that like maybe he can crack the rotation. I mean, like you said, I mean, they brought in 3 veterans on that interior defensive line in the portal. I think those are the guys you're going to really lean on. Alex January, obviously, is still young, but the guy that got a lot of experience in the 2024 season. So, yeah, and I think it'll depend on, we'll see how he does this spring. All these guys are in their weight program. I was talking to, KJ Lacey's a person close to him the other day, and he was saying he's already put on 10 pounds or 3 pounds, 3 or 4 pounds since he's been there. Goal to put on 10 pounds, get up to 200. So, they're all getting in the nutrition program, and Justice Terry, joined them pretty early too. He's been with the program for, going on like almost 2 months now. So, having that spring is important. Maybe it gives him an opportunity to shine a little bit more than maybe he would, but I don't think, we're going to expect him to come in and play and start right away. I think he's got some competition, but that's good. That raises that raises everything in that position room. So I wouldn't be shocked to see him, have some sort of role as the season goes on. We've seen these 5-star guys, kind of slowly get acclimated. Anthony Hill in 2023 that, started using him more and more. Colin Simmons in 2024 using him more and more. So maybe Justice Terry takes that kind of route where, kind of learns the ropes a little bit the first few weeks of the season, and then they kind of unleash him kind of once SEC play starts. We'll see. Depends on how those other guys show up, and how. So this spring will tell us a lot.
Yeah, this spring is going to be big. Got the Arch Manning era unfolding in front of our eyeballs. People forget they lost 10 major contributors on offense.
Yeah.
From this past season. Like Arch, everyone's like, oh, Arch is going to win the Heisman and Texas is the best team returning in college football. And look, Alabama reloaded. I think Texas is in position to reload, Hank. When you look at Texas, is there, a position or two where you're like, I don't know.
Yeah. I think, I wide receiver is going to be somewhat of an unknown. And I say that, and, is it like fully, like we've seen the chemistry that Arch has with DeAndre Moore, in the time they spent, when he started 2 games, Ryan Wingo is obviously Ryan Wingo, but can you rely on just 2 guys? Like other guys are going to need to step up. Are they going to go in the portal and get another playmaking wide receiver in the spring? They might need to. But they have all these young guys coming in too. So I think wide receiver is kind of an area. And then, this is the first season where, you don't have I don't think Gunnar Helm was good. I don't know if we knew Gunnar Helm was going to be this good this year. So this is, the tight end position, they've got good players, but can they raise their game to the level Gunnar Helm did in 2024? So
back to the receiver position, just real quick, because they've got these 3 studs. We talked about Jamie French, Khalil Lockett, Michael Terry.
Yep.
Do you get the sense from just the makeup of these guys? I mean, they're all physically talented. Michael Terry's a monster. He's like 6'3", 217. Do you think 1 or 2 or all 3 could be impact guys this year?
I think they could. I think my latest feeling is Khalil Lockett is probably most ready in terms of the true freshman wide receivers. He's the highest ranked of the group, but I don't think that's just why. I think he's just kind of built to do what Texas would ask him to do, or what would be asked of him. He doesn't need to be the feature guy. I think Jamie French is kind of like a feature type receiver. But I could, Dalen McCutcheon, we wrote in the behind the scenes too, like people at Texas kind of viewed him as like the second best receiver in the state to Decorian Moore, which, I mean, that means above Khalil Lockett, above some of those other talented kids in the state of Texas. So, he's been slept on a lot in this class. He's like a, what's the best way to describe him? Like a process kid. Like he's very committed to like doing the work that needs to be done. I talked to Todd Dodge about him, his head coach at Lovejoy, who obviously has his fair share of talent coaching throughout the years. And, he said that a kid like Dalen McCutcheon made the transition to being the head coach at Lovejoy so much easier because like he had all the other kids bought in on the process of what they needed to do to get better. So, maybe a spring where, he's sticking to that and buying in. Maybe Dalen McCutcheon makes some noise in fall camp or something, or even in the spring, and is a guy that can contribute early. But yeah, Michael Terry, he's with the wide receivers. I'm still curious. Like, I still feel like he's like best at running back. I don't know. Like, I just get him the ball. He can make plays. So wide receiver, maybe if that's the fastest route for him to see the field, makes sense. They're going to have a lot of guys in the backfield, assuming everyone can stay healthy. Maybe they try him at tight end, but yeah, he's just like kind of a fun hybrid piece you can do all sorts of stuff with.
Yeah, I love the Michael Terry, Deebo Samuel comparison. I think that's spot on for what he did back in San Antonio. But last one for me, Hank. Max Wright signing with Texas out of Melissa, Texas. Big time signing. And dude's gigantic, 6'6", 290. Talk about that commitment.
Yeah, Texas saw him at the, they were evaluating him. He didn't play. He transferred out of Plano West as a sophomore to Melissa, where he's at now. Didn't have a ton of tape, but he was at Melissa this year, had a strong junior season. Texas offered him entering his junior season. And yeah, he's verified 6'6.5", 290. There's been some back and forth on like what his actual measurables are, but at junior day at Texas on January 25th, he was 6'6.5", 290. So he's cut down a little weight. Huge kid though, probably still growing too. But yeah, when he got the offer back at the pool party in the summer, he was like, Texas is my leader. And even then I was like, well, like, did you commit, or like, are you going to commit? And he was like, I didn't commit today, but it was very clear Texas was the team to beat. He never backed off that. At junior day, he even told us, he's like, Texas is still my leader. He's like, I'm either going to Texas or SMU. He's like, I don't want to leave the state. And then, 2 days before he announced, he reached out to me, said, I'm committing this week. And, it was just one of those things where it was just like, this kid's going to Texas. And I will be curious to see, because after he committed to Texas, he tweeted out another offer from his school. So I'm like, is he going to be someone that, wants to take more visits or check more things out? I think he's locked in with Texas, but in terms of, trying to get your big humans in the state of Texas, he's certainly one of them. And, in a class that has a guy like him, John Turntine, Felix Ojo, there's some really talented offensive linemen in this class, and he's a really good start.
Hank, great stuff.
Appreciate it.
Everybody get over to horns247.com. Check out the behind the scenes recruiting stories, how the number one recruiting class was put together, from Hank and Jordan Scruggs, who do an amazing job. Appreciate you, man. Let's do it again next week.
Anytime. Thanks, guys.
All right. There it is. South, horns247.com.